Alright everyone, welcome back to SwitchUp. Today we're going to look at some interesting games that we've been playing over the last month or so.
Yep, as we always do with this series, we're going to pick 3 games each that we've played. As we always say, they could be new games, but they don't have to be. Just games that we have been playing over the last few weeks.
As always with this episode, do make sure you let us know what games you've been playing as well, as we do like to give away a few codes, if we can. Save yourself 5% on your eShop credit using code SwitchUp over at switchup.gg for the month of, is it March?
It is March, it is indeed. Okay, so which games have we been playing recently? Well, let's find out.
Alright then, I'll kick us off. I played through the demo of the Sea of Stars game, which is very much supposed to be like the, is it Chrono Trigger series?
Right, yeah.
And it's very much like the Chrono Trigger series from what I gather.
Okay.
You basically got a group of you, in the demo, it kind of does a bit of time jumping.
Right.
So it skips a bit all over the place and it can make it quite difficult to follow the story. But I mean, straight off the bat, just looking at it, it's absolutely beautiful. It's one of those you kind of pick it up and you're like, oh my goodness, why doesn't every game look like this?
Yeah.
Has that lovely pixel art style, but with so much detail underneath, you know, like trees swaying, things moving all over the place. I think it uses like some form of like 3D engine underneath. Because you know, when it doesn't look, like you always say to me, this could never have run back on the SNES.
Yeah, it's like a faux 16-bit style, isn't it? Where, you know, it's made to look as if it would come out in the 90s, but there's so much going on underneath the hood that it wouldn't have done. Exactly
right. Yeah, combat seems relatively straightforward so far. You've got your not tactical turn-based, you've got your turn-based combat using different abilities. I will say it was quite difficult. Like I died a few times, which I was surprised by. I think it's maybe a bit more nuanced than I originally gave it credit for.
Yeah, I mean, I know nothing of this game other than it having been revealed. Obviously, I haven't played the demo or anything else, but if you're talking about Chrono Trigger, I remember playing that back in the day, and I remember the first boss, if you like, first hard part getting absolutely decimated. So yeah, that sounds about right.
Exactly, and the puzzles as well, they're actually surprisingly head-scratching. I'm not gonna lie, I had a few moments where I was sat there like, I can't do this. I don't know what to do. Yeah, it wasn't that difficult. I just, I managed to get fully stuck.
Right. We're just on combat, because Chrono Trigger used an active system, you know, whereby you had a bar, and as your characters moved across the bar, they could then attack. Is it like that, or is it pure turn-based?
Yeah, it's turn-based combat, but it has a really interesting system whereby different characters can do different types of damage, and it shows a bar above their head. And if you can basically do all 3 of those types, then you get an opening, which means you can then do much more damage. It's quite clever. It works quite well.
Right. That sounds quite similar, actually, to a game I reviewed recently, which is Octopath Traveler 2, in their break system.
Oh, nice.
Whereby you have to knock away their like defense points almost, and when their points are used up, then you can break them and do more damage.
Okay.
So it kind of sounds like that in terms of, you know, waiting for that moment.
Yeah, it's nice. It's good to mix up the formula a little bit, you know, and they've got to kind of stand out, haven't they, from a very large crowd.
Absolutely. Lovely job. Okay, well, that's one that will be out soon, hopefully. Yeah. Right, my first one is a game that came out quite recently actually on the Switch, although it is a game that's been out before elsewhere, and this is Project Zero, or Fatal Frame as it's probably more widely known, and this is Mask of the Lunar Eclipse. Now this is obviously part of the Project Zero series, which started back on the PlayStation 2, and this is the 4th game in that series, which was released for the Wii. It never left Japan, actually. It stayed in Japan at the time. It may well be the first time it's actually been released in the West. Now, I love the Project Zero series. I'm a big fan of horror, as I've said many times, but what stands out about this series is that it uses ghosts as its antagonist. You know, the theme is all around ghosts, which is not something that you see very often in games, is it? It's generally zombies or, you know, mutants or monsters or something. What I love especially is its storytelling. It's very reminiscent of Japanese cinema, Japanese horror. I mean, you've got in this game particularly, in terms of the story, you have almost like a who's going to be next, who's going to be targeted next, which you see in things like The Ring or One Missed Call. You've got things like people becoming a shell of their former selves once something's affected them, which you see in things like Pulse. And it just has a general feel of Asian cinema, things like Korean films like Tale of Two Sisters, in terms of that friendship, that bond, and the trials and tribulations these characters are going through, you know?
Yeah, I'm waiting for Film Up now, so I can listen to Glen's first episode. Nice one. I do find that whole mechanic of using the camera to look through quite an interesting premise. Does that come from anything? Was there something that was started in Japan? Do you know or is that like a set style of horror? Or?
It may well be based on some sort of Japanese mythology, but in terms of having an object, that's very common.
Okay.
The ring I mentioned just now, you had the videotape.
Yeah.
One missed call, obviously it's about phone calls, mobile phones. So there is quite a common theme of having an object that either itself is powerful, which is the case with the camera that I'll mention a bit more in a minute, or just there being a essential something that the characters are focused on.
You've just reminded me when they first brought cameras over to those regions, people were really skeptical because they thought that it would capture your soul. So I wonder if there's a link there.
Yeah, I mean, it's the point of the camera obscura, as it's called in this game, is that you use it to exercise ghosts.
Right, okay.
So it's kind of almost like seen as a cleansing ritual, if you like, in this game, and it's the main way that you attack the ghosts.
Right. Okay.
Now this leads me on to my main point of this game and this series in particular. Now I said at the start, big positive being the story.
Yeah.
Very much so. I love the atmosphere. I mean, the way it frames itself, it could be a movie. Like you have characters walking up to doors and you'll have a ghost standing there in the background.
Yeah.
Not necessarily interacting at times. Sometimes they do. There'll be a jump scary moment, but sometimes they're just there and you see them. It's like, oh, what? But I love the way they do all that. The main problem with this series is and always has been the controls.
Right.
In terms of things like walking speed, you're so incredibly slow. The combat element in terms of putting the camera up, which then switches to like a first-person view.
Yeah.
And the way that works, sometimes it's fine because you can move the camera around to frame the ghost.
Yeah.
And you have to wait for the perfect moment to get the fatal frame and do more damage. Hence the North American name. But the problem is that sometimes the ghosts, obviously, they're quite fast the way they move, and they'll disappear and they'll come back somewhere else.
Sounds hideous.
Yeah, but you can't get around quick enough, or you have to put the camera away and try and turn, and you do have things like a quick turn move. It's just very clunky and always has been. And there are some elements that have been improved for this remaster. It was out on the Wii, first of all. I don't know if I said that. And obviously that did have motion controls with the Wii remote. So it may well have been that these were in the original game, but you can use the gyro to control the camera.
Okay.
But you can't use it to control your torch when you're outside of combat. You have to use the right stick. Right. I don't know why you couldn't have just used the gyro for movement.
Yeah.
Moving the camera / torch, moving the actual camera in game. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that sounds
It's very odd. And they've added costumes and it's had a graphical update. Look, if people like costumes, that's fine. But for me, if you're going to remaster something, remaster the controls. Do you know what I mean? Like, bring it up to date.
It said costumes, and I'm just looking at your broccoli t-shirt.
Yeah, Attack of the Broccoli Monster. It's
that is awesome. Nice. All right, next up then for me is a little point and click called Life of Delta.
Oh yeah.
Is it Daedalic?
Daedalic, isn't it?
Daedalic, yeah, that's it. I can't say Daedalic anymore because I know how you're supposed to say it now.
Yeah.
From Daedalic Entertainment. They obviously focus on story-driven experiences, and this is very much, I'll be honest, it felt a bit like WALL-E, the Disney thing. It felt a bit like that. You play as a small robot. Yeah, you're dropped onto this planet. All the humans are dead. It's made very, very abundantly clear very quickly that there's no human life left. It's just robots.
Right.
And you're going around trying to help different ones, and you're on a bit of an adventure. It's quite obscure in terms of what I'm doing at the moment.
Right.
I'm just walking around doing different puzzles and things. There's a few things that I'm not overly infused by with this. Like, the first thing I do with these ones a lot of the time is I'm playing in handheld.
Yep.
Which I have to say, they better keep in the next Switch or I'm going to cry.
Yeah, for sure.
Because we have to, right, with families.
Yeah.
And I go to touch the screen and there's nothing, and you're like, why?
Yeah. For a point and click game as well.
Point and click game. And like that right analog stick is so arduously slow.
Yeah.
Now, you can turn the speed up, but it's not the same, is it? Trying to pinpoint something with that. I don't know why they've done that.
That's a very strange. Yeah, I mean, because obviously mouse 1-to-1, exactly where you want to go. Right stick, as you say, it's like snail's pace trying to get there. Obvious answer is touchscreen, isn't it?
Touchscreen, and then, like you said before in the other one, implement a decent gyro.
Yeah.
You can use a pointer.
Yeah,
you literally just point at the screen if you're in docked mode.
So I did read a bit of this one when I did the upcoming, I think it was only last week, it's a new release, this one, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it said something about, as you just said, no humans left, post-apocalyptic. But it said that all that were left were the service droids or the service robots and like the lizard people that have mutated on the Earth ever since, which was quite...
All I've seen so far are the robots, and then these weird like bumper, what are they called in Star Wars?
Oh, I don't know.
Someone will know. You know what I'm trying to say. They're like they're weird cow creatures. They've basically got those. I'm sure I'll bump into some lizards along the way. The first puzzle was brutally difficult.
Oh, really?
Like, I was embarrassed. I got to the first puzzle and I was like, yeah, boy, got this. This is easy. And I was there like an hour later. Oh. And Josh was like, are you still on that puzzle, Dad? Yeah, I just like it.
Loving this puzzle. Just want to be here forever.
Honestly, it sets the tone. Like, it really does.
So my biggest bugbear with point and click games, I've said this before, is as much as I know that you're going to go all nostalgic and say, no, that's what it's all about. I hate illogical puzzle. I don't see the point. You know, when you have to get a fish stick and an umbrella and tie them together and float across a cavern. I don't like that. I like logic. Now, I know you said it's difficult, but are they logical? They're
fully logical. Right. Everything here is logical. You'd really like it. So it's like, they're almost like little Mensa puzzles. So to solve the very first unlock, you've got this triangular grid. I'm sure you'll see it in the footage. Right. And you basically, every time you highlight one, it highlights two at the side, and it gives you the picture that you need to create over here. But there's so many options, and they all affect so many of these different sides that it is really tricky. Yeah. And you've got a timer that's going down, and if you run out of time, you have to start the puzzle again.
Time-based, that's not
time-based, bro. Yeah, for the first puzzle, I was like, oh.
Yeah, that's pretty tough. I mean, don't get me wrong, I do like the idea of finding an item in the world. I don't mean they have to be completely logical, like trying to, unlock it.
Just has to make sense.
It has to make sense. Yeah. In a real world situation, you would use that object for that. Yeah. I like that more. But, okay, fair enough. So this one maybe takes a couple of missteps by the sounds of it.
Yeah, but having said all of that, it's a classic point-and-click adventure, and it looks lovely, like beautiful world, really easy to get into. And I'm sure most, like you say, hardcore point-and-click fans who are used to having to pick up the rubber chicken and use that to get across the thing, they're going to like the fact you pick up the slingshot and shoot the flag down. It makes sense. Yeah. So yeah, good one, but just needs a few tweaks on the controls.
Okay. Right, my next one is one that I'm sure everyone with a Switch has played by this point, but I'd only recently played it properly and finished it, completed it. Now, you mentioned Daedalic just now, and we went to visit them at their offices recently. And for the flight over there, I'm not a huge fan of flying, I must say. So I picked a game that I was going to play, and I was going to play it through to completion and kind of take my mind off things. And I took Super Mario Odyssey off the shelf. Having only played, I don't know, an hour of it back in 2019, say. I picked it up and thought, no, I'm gonna play it, and I completed it. And I've got to say, as much as I had reservations about the moons, the quantity of the moons, as opposed to say the stars of the older games, or the older game, Mario 64, I did really enjoy it. I did really enjoy it. I mean, it's as you expect with first-party Nintendo, just a fantastically crafted game. The new mechanic of possessing, if you like, the enemies with your hat, Cappy. Actually, the further into it you get, the more it works, and the more you have to use it. At the start, it's a bit of a novelty, and it's just, this is fun. Yeah. But then it almost becomes a bit puzzle-based in terms of what enemies you need to get past certain bits.
Okay. Yeah, I was wondering if it does move beyond just the gimmick.
Yeah, it does. I would quite happily see it removed from the next game. It wouldn't bother me. Not because it's bad. It's fine. Yeah. We've done that now. What else have you got, Nintendo? But I did. Towards the end, there's a part, I think it's almost like the penultimate level, I don't want to spoil too much, but there is a part which I found I did find it a bit odd that you need to possess a certain enemy pretty much for the whole level. Right. And it was almost not an option. Like, you couldn't get past certain parts without having this particular enemy. Okay. And obviously they were plentiful, so if you lost one, you could get another one. Yeah. I just found that was a bit odd. Like, you want to play as Mario, surely, That
is a bit unusual for the last stage.
Well, it was towards the end. It wasn't the last stage, but it was close. But I did enjoy that mechanic of taking over the enemies. It was quite refreshing, and it did mix things up a bit,
Would you go back? So I know before we played this, and kind of when we played it early on, you were like, "Oh, there's too many moons." Do you still hold to that?
What I would say about that is that there are loads and loads of them, but it's done in such a way that you land on each new world. Yeah. And you have X amount you have to get before you can move on. It's normally 10. Although I think on one level it's 20, which is the iconic New Donk City stage. But there are so many to collect that you only have to get your 10 or your 20, and then you can move on. So you're not having to constantly look for them. The thing I kind of miss, and it is there, but I missed the succinct nature of Mario 64, of jumping back into the world, getting ahead in a vague clue of what the star was going to be.
Yeah.
Looking for that one star, being taken back out of the world. I did like that. I know that's probably quite archaic these days, but I enjoyed that nice. I think it dovetailed things a bit more than just leaving you in there and you're constantly tripping over moons every so often.
We're going to have to run an experiment and get our kids to play 64 after this and see what they think.
Yeah, I don't. The problem with that, if you were trying to get any sort of results from that, is that Mario 64 just hasn't aged well in terms of its controls.
Yeah.
Even the.
Plus, they'll look at it and go, ooh.
Oh, it looks like absolute Kentucky Fried ass these days as well. But it's just in terms of controls. Even the new one they did.
Yeah.
The remaster. It didn't remaster anything in terms of controls. So Galaxy would as well, but Odyssey, would win all day long with that. If they could take the core mechanic of the stars and just how more succinct that was, and have the controls and the glossy sheen of Odyssey, we'd have a game,
What if they remade it in that engine?
It'd be
just
great.
As a one-off? That'd be
amazing.
Cool, wouldn't it?
I mean, I'm probably what.
I do that.
I don't know, maybe, but that's kind of what people were expecting with that 3D trilogy.
Yeah.
But it wasn't. It was the same old game, a bit of upscaling at best, wasn't it? And yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, Odyssey's a great game. Very much enjoyed my time with it. I loved the, there's some post-game content as well, which is lovely. They make a lot of nods to older games, which is nice to see. I do just miss that star system, just being an sad old man now,
Throwing in a completely red herring conversational piece. Obviously, I've been playing, and I think you have as well, the Metroid remaster.
Yes, I have been.
That is amazing.
Yes, it is.
And it's not a very Nintendo thing to do.
It's very strange.
Isn't it?
Very strange. Just the price point. I mean, it's £35 as opposed to £50. Dropped out of nowhere. Yeah. I don't know what. I mean, I'm glad it happened. Very glad it happened. But it was very un-Nintendo.
Do you think they might learn? Because obviously the feedback has been incredibly positive. Because now we're talking about that little Mario 64 and the dream that they would redo that. That would be incredible.
Yeah, I'm going to be slightly cynical and wonder if because Metroid Prime 4 has been delayed, or it's not been delayed, it's just kind of been forgotten about.
It's like a band-aid, isn't it?
Yeah, it's pretty much like the masses are revolting.
Yeah.
What should we do? Chuck them a remaster of a loved game. Put the price down, don't charge them the usual 50, it'll keep them quiet for a while. Do you know what I mean? No, maybe I'm wrong.
Glen Bowser. All right, lovely. My next game then is No Place for Bravery.
Okay, yeah.
This one came out quite a while back. I looked at the art style in one of your upcoming videos and thought, like, as the shallow person I am, that looks amazing.
Yeah.
It's like I don't even know how to describe it. It's like a hack and slash, but it feels like it has a bit of Souls-like in it as well. So you move from bonfire. I think they're bonfires. You move from bonfire to bonfire. You've almost got like a beat 'em up style combat system, but it has that dodge move. It has different weapons that you can get, and it has this mechanic whereby when you've killed an enemy, sometimes you'll get a very small window where there'll be a yellow triangle, and if you can press the button just in time, you'll do an execution, which look amazing. Like you slice them in half, cut their heads off, and that restores some of your specials. I think it's like stamina or something like that. It doesn't seem to be health. You get small pickups for health and things like that.
Yeah.
So it does feel quite Soulsy in that regard, and I'm gutted I didn't play it originally.
Yeah.
I think you'd like this one. I wasn't sure how that mechanic, how it worked, because it is brutally difficult. Like there's projectiles flying all over the place. You do have a shield, but obviously keeping your shield up reduces your stamina and
I see.
actually break it down.
Yep.
But then it has like a bit of a Metroidvania feel as well, because I got this hammer and then I could open up a new path and go to a new place. I don't know. Have you seen this one?
Yeah, I remember the trailer. Had quite a nice colour palette from what I remember. Nice and bright. Top down, isn't it? As you might have said, sorry if you did. But I do remember the look of it. And I kind of guessed, if you like, that it was going to be a Souls-like of some description. It just had that look about it, Yeah,
it's funny, isn't it? Because we play so many games now. You can be so critical, and you're always looking for that thing that kind of makes them stand out.
Yeah.
I actually do think this has that. I think that's what, for me, is the biggest surprise. Is I'm like, oh, okay, this really feels different. There's the mechanic I talked about before, about the quick timing, which initially I hated. I was like, this doesn't work. But then I started looking at their health bar and making sure I was ready to look for the triangle, and then quickly press the button if it was there. So that actually does work quite well. And you can also wound enemies, which I like. So you have different moves, like you hold a button down, you do a massive swing, and you'll see that they'll be bleeding and running away.
Oh wow,
that's cool. So there's like an archer firing at me, and then he fell down dead. I was like, yeah, okay, I like that.
Yeah, that is pretty
cool.
And again, that goes back to what we were saying just now about quite a simplistic art style, or obviously pixel based. But again, it's doing things that wouldn't have been possible back in the day,
Yeah. I mean, you'd like this because it's like, well, this is not why you'd like it, but it's very crimson heavy title.
Right.
Let's put it that way. You're seeing the footage. There's like just blood everywhere. It's proper. Yeah, I like this. Really good. I think I've done 2 boss fights so far. It's not too difficult either. It has that just right. Like one of those where you die and you know it was fully your fault. Because you, like you always say with beat 'em ups, you just do those one too many attacks.
Yeah,
you get a bit greedy, you get a bit frustrated. You're like, bosh. But yeah, like this one.
Nice. Oh, sounds good. Right, last one then. This is from the Nintendo Switch Online app, and it's from the Nintendo 64 side of that app. Which I'll be honest, as much as I grew up, I was in my teens when it was released, the N64, and grew up with it and loved it. I've barely touched the app.
No.
I don't know why. Maybe it was just that.
Time.
Yeah, well, time is certainly a factor, but I think it's kind of that era where they were experimenting with 3D. It's not as... You can go back to a Super Nintendo game and you can play it for its simplicity.
Yeah.
Whereas some of the N64 games, they're quite a chore to get through.
Well, like you say, there's a lot of people that are trying to emulate the style of the snares and things like that.
Yeah.
So that has almost got a timeless look to it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny you say that because that's how I feel about it. And the game I'm talking about, by the way, is Pilotwings 64.
Nice, classic.
It is a classic, and we'll talk about it in a minute. But I just want to take up the point you just mentioned because I think it's a good point. Is that I remember getting the N64, and the 2 games I got were Mario 64 and Pilotwings 64. They were the 2 games that I bought. No, GoldenEye wasn't out yet, I don't think.
Oh, wow.
As far as I can remember. But anyway, they were the 2. I think Turok was out maybe at the time or close to release. Yeah. But anyway, the opening wow factor of Mario 64 and that 3D world and the games that came after it, not just from Nintendo, but from everyone who wanted a piece of this new pie, do you know what I mean? And 2D platformers kind of died.
Yeah.
And I, as a huge fan of them on the Super Nintendo, was like, as much as this is great, I hope we don't lose those. And we did for a while. I think there was only like 1 on the N64 in its whole lifetime. But over the years of the 2, 2D platformers are back and 3D platformers are the ones that have kind of died. And every time you see one release, it's this whole huge nostalgic a homage to the games of old. So it's quite funny how that switched. But Pilotwings 64, after that initial wow of Mario and what a great game that was, it was Pilotwings that I played the most. That was the game that I loved.
It was really difficult, wasn't it?
It was difficult, but it was just so refreshing to have so much freedom in a game. I mean, you had... Obviously, it's again, if people haven't played it, it's a mission-based game where you have a number of vehicles that you pilot. So you have, I think it's a gyrocopter, hang glider, and like a rocket pack, isn't it? Rocket belt.
Yeah.
And you have to pass certain missions to get your licenses to open up the next class. And you have things like, they're quite basic in terms of what you have to do. It's like fly through X amount of rings and land.
Yeah, I know the one,
pop balloons. There are sometimes you have like missiles, you have to shoot targets. Like I say, quite simplistic, but the way it works was fantastic. Seeing these, polygonal 3D worlds was great, and as you started to open up levels that were a bit more open world and you could explore, and there was one that was based on like New York City, I seem to, or New York, America, in general, I think it was, I can't remember now. But just flying around was amazing, and having played it for a couple of hours recently, it does hold up well. It's
funny, isn't it? The experience of those, it's just, for me, it's, at the time, they felt different to how they feel to me now.
Yeah.
Those, like, when you're a kid, you almost put yourself in the pilot's seat, It's when you're remembering back to it, it's like you were flying that plane.
Yeah, exactly. And also, I mean, I'm not saying all adults are like this, but me personally, I'm not a completionist anymore. I'm not a perfectionist in games. I will try to finish a game.
Yeah.
Back in the day when you're a kid, that's not the case. You just want to see everything. You want to complete everything. So getting gold medals wasn't enough. I wanted a perfect score. I unlocked the mini games. You had one where you got shot out of a cannon, and I remember you could get shot into, like, Mario's face had replaced someone on Mount Rushmore. Yeah. And if you shot at the perfect point into Mario's face, he turned into Wario. Just these little Easter eggs, it was great. Like, it's so good. And this, I do think it's held up well. I think the problem with N64 games in general is you didn't have a right stick.
Right, yeah.
You had 4
those
C buttons,
yellow buttons,
the yellow buttons. and it meant you kind of moved in increments of 90 degrees, didn't you? And it was quite, well, it was painful. At the time, it was the new thing, so it was great. And with Pilotwings, it's not as big a deal, but when you're just trying to see around to see where that next ring is, it's still quite awkward, you know?
Yeah.
But again, I'd love to see a remake of this game.
I've got to get you on. There is a remake of this game. It's not made by these people.
Yeah.
It's in VR.
Right, okay.
It's amazing.
Right.
I think you might be all right with it because you're just sat and the only head movement you do is looking around while you're sat in a plane.
Okay.
So you start it off and again, you've got to do all the same things like going through hoops and stuff like that. I've got to get you in it because I think it might be the one VR game that you really connect with.
Yeah, get on board with, yeah. It's funny. I mean, I actually turned the N64 app on to play GoldenEye, which you mentioned. I was like, oh, GoldenEye's out now, isn't it? Turned it on, completely forgetting that Pilotwings was on there. And that's it, like GoldenEye hasn't got a look in, you know?
Yeah, lovely. All right, well, I think that takes us to the end.
That's it, yep.
Nice games in there. Nice bit of chat. Let us know down in the comments your ones as well. I kind of sit and just read what people bring up.
Yeah.
So very often there's things that I've completely forgotten about and they're like, you didn't mention that. And I'm like, oh man, yeah, I remember that on the N64. That was glorious. Killer Instinct Gold. Was that Killer Instinct 64?
No, it was Gold. Yeah,
it was
on
Gold,
the N64. It was a good game.
Like that.
Yeah, it was a good game.
Got overlooked.
Yeah, lovely stuff. So as Mark said, please put any games you've been playing in the comment section. Don't forget, as he also said at the start, if you want to save yourself a bit of money on eShop credit, you can use our website, SwitchUp.gg, get 5% off as it currently stands. We will be moving on to something a bit different soon, and we'll unveil details of that as and when.
Absolutely. Big thanks to our Patreons. I think we had a new Patreon this week.
Nice.
Yeah, someone signed up to that, so thanks very much. I better update those Patreon credits. And our members as well. We had a couple of new members this month. So yeah, it's a massive help to us. It's just us two. There's no big channel. There's no big corporation behind it. It's just Glen and I.
Exactly.
Just doing our thing. So thanks for enjoying it. For all things Switch all the time, keep it Switch up. Cheers, guys. See ya!